A little girl restores a boat everyone thought was beyond saving using nothing but determination, heart, and her late grandpa's old toolkit in a sleepy coastal town. Ellie faced laughter and doubt when she dared to fix the rusted boat that once carried her family's dreams. But what happened next stunned them all. This powerful story of how a little girl restores a boat and brings an entire harbor back to life will leave you inspired. But before we dive in, tell us, where are you watching from? We love seeing our global family in the comments. Let's get started. You probably wouldn't expect much from a little girl with oil-stained hands and a stubborn look in her eyes. But let me tell you something. Sometimes, the smallest people carry the biggest dreams. And this one? Her name was Ellie. She couldn't have been more than 10. Skinny as a rail, wild brown hair that wouldn't stay down no matter how much she combed it. But there was fire in her. The kind you don't teach in school. Ellie lived with her grandpa, Old Bill, in a faded wooden house just off the harbor road. You know, the kind with creaky floorboards, salt air in the curtains, and memories tucked into every drawer. Old Bill wasn't just some cranky retired guy. He was a legend around these parts back in the day. Folks called him Iron Bill, the best damn boat mechanic the coast had ever seen. If your engine coughed funny, Bill could tell you what was wrong just by listening. No gadgets, no manuals, just ears, hands, and decades of grease under his nails. But after his wife passed, Bill slowed down. His world got quieter until Ellie came to live with him. After that, something in him woke up again. Maybe it was the way she followed him everywhere, or how she asked questions like a sponge soaking up every drop of knowledge. They'd spend hours in that old workshop behind the house, elbow deep in nuts and bolts. Ellie perched on a crate beside him, eyes wide, soaking in every word. And right there in the corner of the shop sat a boat, or what was left of one. It had no name, no engine, half the paint chipped away. Just an old wooden hull that looked like it had lost every fight it ever picked with time and the sea. But Bill loved that boat. Someday, he used to say, running his hand along the splintered rail, this old girl's gonna ride the waves again. You and me, Ellie, will bring her back to life. She'd grin up at him, grease on her cheek, and say, "We'll make her sing again. Grandpa, I promise." It became their thing, their dream, fixing that forgotten boat together. But dreams, as you know, don't always wait for the right time. That winter was colder than most. Frost on the windows every morning. Bill caught a chill that never quite let go. One morning, Ellie found him slumped beside the boat, hand still wrapped around a wrench. He was gone before she even had the chance to say goodbye. They buried him facing the sea. And after that, the workshop stayed dark for a while. After the funeral, something changed in Ellie. She didn't talk much anymore, not even to the neighbors who came by with casseroles and soft condolences. She just nodded, said thank you, and returned to the little wooden house that now echoed a little more than it used to. The workshop stayed shut for weeks. The windows fogged from the cold, and the dust settled in thick layers. No clinks of tools, no smell of oil, no Grandpa Bill's deep laugh rumbling through the rafters. But then, one morning, long before the sun had properly risen, a single light flickered on in the back window of the shop. Ellie was inside. She stood there alone, swimming in her grandpa's oversized flannel shirt, her tiny hands wrapped around the same wrench he'd died holding. She just stood for a while, looking at the boat, not crying, not smiling, just remembering. Then, without a word, she climbed into the hull and got to work. At first, no one noticed. The harbor folk were busy with their own troubles, fish to catch, bills to pay, engines to patch, a child mucking around in an old boat that didn't register. But eventually, folks started seeing her, every day like clockwork, rain or shine. Ellie was there, elbows deep in rusted bolts and tangled wiring, face smudged with grease, fingers bleeding from stripped screws and splinters. She never asked for help. Never once. And wouldn't you know it, some people laughed. You know the kind. Look at that. They'd chuckle, leaning on fences. Little Ellie thinks she's gonna fix that wreck. Poor kid, others would say, shaking their heads. She's playing pretend. That boat ain't run in 20 years. Bill couldn't get it going. She sure won't. They didn't mean it cruel. Most of them just didn't think much of it. People forget that dreams don't come with age limits. But Ellie didn't hear the laughter. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. Because in her heart, she wasn't fixing a boat. She was finishing a promise. Every night, after hours of scraping barnacles and sorting through buckets of corroded parts, she'd sit cross-legged with a flashlight and her grandpa's old manual, thumbing through pages worn soft from years of grease and time. Half the notes were in Bill's handwriting, looping. Patient, full of arrows and underlines, he'd drawn little stars next to parts she needed to watch closely. Sometimes she'd whisper out loud, reading his notes like he was still sitting beside her. Ellie, remember, listen to the motor. It'll tell you what's wrong if you're quiet enough. She believed in him. And maybe, just maybe, that's what kept her going. It was late October when the first real setback hit. The engine. She'd cleaned every bolt, replaced every hose, rewired the ignition coil just like Grandpa Bill's notes had said. She even found a replacement starter motor from a junkyard 3 towns over, hauled it home in a wagon like some kind of treasure. And yet, when she finally turned the key, nothing. Not a cough, not a click, just silence. She tried again, and again, and then one more time, even though she already knew it wouldn't work. Ellie sat back slowly, staring at the old motor like it had just betrayed her. And for the first time in months, she cried. Not the loud, angry tears of a frustrated child. No, these were quiet tears, the kind that come when you've tried your best, and your best still wasn't enough. For a whole week, she didn't go back to the shed. The harbor noticed. Even the old fishermen, the same ones who'd scoffed weeks ago, asked around. Ain't seen the girl today. She's usually out there by now. Maybe she finally gave up. But one man didn't believe that. Old Hank, who used to fish alongside Bill back in the day. He'd watched Ellie work from his porch every morning, coffee in hand, never saying a word. That morning, he walked down to the house and left something on her porch, a box of spare boat parts, some tools, and a little folded note. All it said was, "Even engines lie sometimes. Try again. Kid." Hank. That afternoon, the light in the shop flicked back on. Ellie didn't smile, but she did pick up her wrench. She cracked open the engine, one more time, this time slower. She listened differently, and she found it. A small break in the grounding wire, invisible to the eye, but enough to keep the whole motor dead. She fixed it with trembling hands. Then she closed her eyes and turned the key. It coughed. She opened one eye, waited. Then it coughed again. And then, like a giant waking up from a long sleep, it roared. The engine came to life in a deep, sputtering growl, coughing smoke and shaking the walls, but it was alive. Ellie laughed. Not a small giggle. A full, belly-deep laugh that echoed through the shop like a bell. If Grandpa Bill had been there, he would have laughed too. Out on the porch, old Hank smiled without a word. The harbor stopped laughing that day. They started watching instead. It was a quiet Saturday morning when Ellie rolled the boat out of the shed. She'd painted the hull herself a soft blue, like the sky right after a storm. The old name, the Minnow, was still faintly visible beneath the fresh coat, like a memory that refused to fade. She tied her hair back with Grandpa Bill's old bandana. It still smelled faintly of motor oil and cedar shavings. People noticed. First, it was just old Hank, leaning against his truck with arms folded. Then came Mr. and Mrs. Callahan from the bakery, 2 boys from the dock crew, and the high school teacher who once told Ellie that boats were no place for little girls. One by one, they gathered, curious but quiet. Ellie didn't speak. She just worked steady hands, methodical movements. She loaded in a gas can, double-checked the ropes, and unhooked the trailer. It all felt sacred, like a ceremony. And when the boat hit the water, it floated like it had never left. She climbed aboard, heart pounding. The moment she turned the key, the whole dock seemed to hold its breath. The engine coughed, once, twice. Then, a deep, steady growl. The minnow was alive again. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Not from what they heard, but from what they saw. Ellie's face. It wasn't pride. It wasn't arrogance. It was peace. Like something broken inside her had finally been made whole. She pushed off gently from the dock, steering the boat slowly out into open water. Her hands were sure. Her back. Straight. Her gaze. Steady. She didn't look back. But the town did. They watched her carve through the waves like she belonged there. No one laughed. Not now. In fact, someone started clapping. Then another. And before long, the whole harbor, all those folks who once doubted, once whispered, once smirked, they were cheering. For Ellie, the little girl who brought a boat back to life. A week later, the minnow was docked proudly near the center of town. Kids passed by and pointed. That's the boat the little girl fixed. Old-timers nodded, not with disbelief, but with a kind of quiet reverence. Inside Ellie's garage, tools still hung on pegboards. The scent of oil and pine lingered. A photo of Grandpa Bill sat above the workbench, his weathered smile forever watching over her. But something had changed. People began knocking on her door. First came a retired fisherman with a cracked rudder, then a mother whose son had broken his kayak. And soon, even the grumpy marina manager showed up, asking if she could take a quick look at his old outboard motor. Not because she was cheap, not because she was cute, but because she was good. Ellie never asked for praise. She just got to work. One job at a time, one engine at a time. And every time she turned a bolt or wiped grease from her hands, it was like she was whispering, "I remember what you taught me, Grandpa." Years passed. The garage stayed open. The sign above it now read, "Ellie's Boatworks Restored, with heart and a little bit of magic." Locals told the story again and again about the little girl they once underestimated, who taught them all what patience, grit, and quiet determination really looked like. Tourists would stop by just to meet her. Some left inspired, some left in tears. And when someone asked Ellie once, in an interview for a small-town paper, "What kept you going, even when no one believed in you?" she just smiled and said, "Engines talk. You just have to listen. People are kind of the same. Anyone can rebuild a broken boat if they listen close enough and believe deep enough." As the sun dipped behind the harbor, casting a golden shimmer across the quiet waters, Ellie stood beside the minnow, not with a wrench in her hand, but with a quiet smile of purpose. She wasn't thinking about her next repair. She was sketching plans for something bigger, a community workshop for kids like her, the kind who had been told that's not for girls, or you're too young to understand engines. This time, those kids would hear something else. "You belong here. Let's build something together." She knew now the dream she once kept tucked between oil cans and old spark plugs wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to every little girl who loved machines, every kid with calloused hands and a quiet heart, and every soul who had ever been doubted. The girl they once laughed at for touching a rusted hull had become the one who taught a town to listen again, not just to engines, but to each other. Because for Ellie, and for all who come after, the goal was never just to make boats run. It was to prove they were never broken to begin with. The end. But your journey isn't over. Click to watch the next story of grit, kindness, and quiet courage, and hit subscribe if you believe every underdog deserves their own harbor to come home to.